Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson, and I am, as always, your host, Courtney Anderson. Now today we have a very interesting topic for me personally, and one of the reasons I decided that our show would be about this topic today was because of all of the questions that I've gotten over the past 14 years as a keynote speaker and corporate trainer. So our topic today is Myth Warriors. Target. Speakers earn $5,000 an hour? No education is required? So again, our Myth Warriors series is where we sort of put ideas out there and we try to do some level, although rudimentary, in this setting of critical analysis. Is this a credible idea? Is it a valid idea for me to either adhere to or to discard? And so that's what we're doing. And so our target for this Myth Warrior series is this idea that there's something called speakers, professional speakers or keynote speakers or corporate trainers, and they earn $5,000 an hour. And no education is required. Wow. Well, if this is accurate, if this myth is accurate, then I think that we all know what we're going to do with our careers. We're going to go get this job where we earn $5,000 an hour and up, U.S. dollars, and then we don't have to have any education, so we can all start, right now. And wow. So let's start working through this. One of the things that I shared in sort of the episode description, and one of the reasons I picked this is, as I've mentioned, I have been very fortunate to find professional opportunities and things that I do for fees that I enjoy, that I really enjoy. And one of the most exciting, transformative things that I've done professionally is this entire idea of speaking, of being a professional speaker. And so I just want to give you a little bit of my, personal anecdotal experience in this. So fast forward back, many years ago, it's sort of the late 1990s, and we're getting ready to go into the new year 2000. There's a lot of excitement in the air. There's a lot of fear for those of you who were alive and cognizant at that time. There was something called Y2K. There was a lot of, I think, global, fear that basically the computers, right, had become, more and more a part of our lives, not anywhere near like they are now. So imagine a time, no smartphones. The internet existed, but in a really kind of rudimentary sense compared to what people do now. And there was this idea that when the computers went from the 1900s, right, from 1999 to flip over to 2000, that it would sort of cause some sort of catastrophic computer error, and then, all the computers would shut down, and we didn't even know what would happen, right, with the banking shut down, with transportation shut down. Who knew? And it was like a big thing. So that's the time. So for those of you, again, not quite aware of what was happening at that time, a little bit younger in age, it was a real time of change. And so here I am, and I'm running my little law firm. I've been running that for a couple years, and I was in the state capital of Texas, Austin, Texas, wonderful. And so I was running my little law business, and I was making pretty good money. I mean, for one person, in my 20s, who started that law firm with no money and nothing, I was able to build it up and make a nice living for myself. I bought my first house for myself, which was a big dream, and I'd gotten that done. And I had moved my law office to a very kind of fancy downtown high-rise in a beautiful building. So, on paper, things look great. But I was in a position where I was working a lot of hours, and I wasn't enjoying all of them. I'd find myself late at night at my office in the big fancy high-rise in downtown Austin, and I'd be there really late because I'm a small business owner, so I'm having to market my services. I'm having to, provide the legal services, meet with people. I'm having to do a lot of the legwork myself because small business. I didn't have a big staff of paralegals, though I did have some help. And so I'm also having to do all the accounting and handle all the issues with, paying for my overhead. And, it's all the things small business owners do. So I love being a small business owner, and that made me happy. And I was making, pretty good money. I bought, like I said, my own house, and I was super proud of myself. But I'd sit at that office sometimes, and I'd think, this job is powerful. I do get to help people. But this job is also emotionally very heavy, meaning that people usually don't go to a lawyer and pay, reasonable fees unless something's really quite serious. And usually they're bad things. So somebody's in jail, somebody's filed for divorce, somebody's having an argument over child custody, somebody's died, and they need to decide what needs to be done to probate the estate. A small business is failing. A personal situation financially is under stress, so people have to file for bankruptcy. People haven't been paid in their small business, and they need a lawyer to go out there and be aggressive and threaten to sue if they don't get demand letters met. So all day, every day, you just deal with problem after problem after problem, which, duh, right? That's why people go to lawyers. With the exception, I always thought, why didn't I just specialize like in adoptions or something? The few happy things that people go to lawyers to do. But that's neither here nor there. I was a small business, and I went where the business was. So the majority of the business is sort of everyday things, right? Financial things, family law things, criminal law issues. That's kind of where people need lawyers the most, and they're going to pay, especially for somebody who's sort of a new, younger lawyer, and they gave me a chance to prove, my value, and also gave me a chance to make colossal mistakes and learn what I needed to improve to be a better lawyer, but mostly just to be a better business person, right? So I sit in my office, and I was sitting there one night, and I thought, I'm good at this, and I'm making, really good money, right? Because I never had made much before my law office. The only other, job I had that was sort of a real job, I taught University of Texas at Austin in their business school for a couple of semesters. And other than that, I, worked fast food and worked at the mall, and I had a lot of minimum wage jobs. And so here I am making, really good money, right? And there's a price to pay. So I sat in my office one night, I don't know what night, and I looked on the computer. As I said, we had computers back there then, but just not the type of speed or capacity, and certainly not the type of internet infrastructure we have today. But I looked online, and there was a job posting, and I was looking on job sites. And sometimes I'll do this. I sometimes even do it now, but really rarely. I'll get kind of, melancholy, and I'll think, maybe there's something else out there for me. So I was looking around on this job site, and it had something, something to the effect of they were looking for a lawyer to go and do like a training session or a little speech about some employment law stuff, like hiring and firing and all that kind of good stuff. And so I read that, and I thought, oh, well, a lawyer, that's me. And, talking is like my favorite part of law, right? Like that's the part that is my favorite part. And the reality is on TV, when they show lawyers on TV, they're almost always in trial, and they get to talk all the time, and it's exciting, and they're in front of a judge or a jury, or they're in court with the other lawyer, and they're making these really great speeches, and it's awesome. But in real life, for most lawyers, because most cases in real life do not go to trial, you just, like somewhere around 2% of cases go to trial. So that means in real life, mostly you just do paperwork. It's a lot of paperwork. And then when you do get to go to court, you don't get to do really cool things like in a TV show or a movie where you're out there and you're arguing the law, and you're making things real, and you're out there and you're kind of on stage. You don't really get to do that much. A lot of it's just perfunctory. So, you sort of stand when they call your case, and you'll say things like, present, Your Honor, I believe it'll take, 4 minutes for my case. And then you sit down. You don't really get to do much of the good, fun stuff. So I saw this thing online. It said something about a lawyer. It said something about some place. The organization or the company was in Kansas City, and then it said something about, contact us. And so I was sitting there, and I thought, I am self-employed, so let me check and see what this is. And it was clear that it wasn't a job. Like, you weren't going to apply to be an employee. It was like a contract. Like, you would go and give the speech. They're looking for a lawyer to give the speech, and then it would be like a one-time thing. So I don't remember all the details. But I reached out to them, and it ended up that they said, the people who would put the ad out, hey, we have this organization, and we do seminars. We do seminars, which is what it sounds like. They hold little seminar meetings at hotels around the country, and they're called public seminars because anyone in the public is invited to come pay a fee and come to the seminar. And they explained to me that this seminar that they had put the ad out for was a seminar about, like law stuff. Like a lawyer was going to go talk about, I think mostly employment law, like, interview questions not to ask, how to, document things. So I was listening, and they said, yeah, so that's what we are. We're a company or an organization, and we do these sort of public seminars, and we put them all over the country, and we're just trying to find a lawyer to go. It was to Minnesota. The contract was going to be in Minnesota, starting in Minneapolis, and you're going to just talk about some of this law stuff, and I thought, okay. And so we talked a little bit more, and they said, well, you would have to sort of, show us what you can do, show us what your skills are. And I thought, okay. So it turned out that they had invited me to come to their headquarters, which was in the Kansas City. I want to say Kansas City. I was trying to remember if it was in Missouri. I think it's Kansas City, Missouri, if I remember correctly. Because there's a Kansas City, Kansas, and a Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. But they say, come out here to where our, business headquarters are. We'll meet with you. We'll sort of see, if you actually are capable of this, this job, this sort of speaking, talking job. And I thought, what do I have to lose? So I flew out there. I don't remember what time of year, but I remember it was sort of like a little office park, like a nondescript little office park, and I was going to meet with some of the people, and they had said to me, we need you to, come in here and meet with us and just give us like a 5-minute little presentation so we can see if you, actually are capable of this, speaking work. And so I thought, okay. So I walked in, again, like a little, nondescript office park, and there were a couple of people in a little conference room, and I treated it sort of like, as a lawyer, you don't get to do a lot of talking, right? I said that. But the job I had done right before I was my law firm, sometimes brilliantly and sometimes with some challenges outside of the work, was I had taught. I had, taught at the University of Texas at Austin in their business school, where I'd also, gone to college and law school. And that job was awesome because it was all talking, right? It was just talking and lecturing, what they call it. And then, I had to grade papers, but I actually enjoyed that. So I had done a job where I got to talk a lot, and pontificate and tell stories. And it was all about business law, but I got to, do the part I like. So I approached this little meeting in the little office, sort of like that. I said, I'll do a little mini lecture, right? Because I'd done that a lot, and I know how to do that. So I went in there and I did a little, little mini lecture on I don't remember what. And at the end of it, they sort of said, okay, give us a few minutes. And then they came back, and one of the executives said something like, that's it, this is good. We're going to go ahead and we'd like you to, to consider taking this contract, and we want to, hire you for this one-off opportunity. And it was going to be, going to 2 different cities, so it would be like a week, right? And then like on Monday and Tuesday, I know I was in Minneapolis, that's where it started. I always will remember that. And then I went to some other city for the final 2 days of the week, and then each day I was in the city, I'd be at a certain, local hotel, and then people from the public who paid to come would come and listen to my presentation on, this topic. And then this company, of course, is the company who markets it. They're the ones that get the people to pay, and they process their payments, and the only thing that the speaker does that they were, hiring me for was just sort of show up. They had a whole bunch of rules and protocol for how they wanted the speech to work, how long you spoke, when you took a break, all this kind of stuff. And then there was a big aspect of the work, which was getting people who showed up to invest, right? And lifelong education, which is, corporate speak for to buy products, right? So, books on human resources or law or whatever. And so they had a ton of these resources. And so they paid you, this organization, it's a public seminar company, they paid you to go, and they paid you a certain amount of a flat rate just for showing up and speaking, right? And then they pay you on top of that, I think you got a per diem. And then you get a commission on all the things that people, order and buy, because that's, a lot of the job. So anyway, make a long story short, I remember, I'm literally running a law firm, so I had to plan it, ahead to make sure that week I didn't have it to be in court or anything, and that I could, handle anything else that my clients had by phone or email. And then I, went off on a Sunday to fly to Minneapolis for this first, which I thought might be the only, this thing where you give a speech and people, pay you for that. And I'll never forget, I actually had a ride to the airport with a relative, and the relative was being kind of, not super awesome, supportive. But the relative had some valid points. I mean, the relative's valid points were look, you built this law firm here in the last couple of years. It's amazingly, I think, surprisingly to everyone, it's doing well. You're making money. What on earth are you doing flying to, Minneapolis for some weird thing you saw on the internet for some people in Kansas City who said that they'll pay you to give a speech? Like, what on earth is this? And it's, it's kind of, stupid and not really well advised. All right. So, I was totally apprehensive too, because one of the things I've shared in other programs and it's a consistent part of our everything that we do in practicing joyful art of business is, what do you do when you might feel like you're maybe unsatisfied, or maybe you have a fear? Do you face it? Do you stay where you are because it's safe? What do you do? And so even now, looking back, I like I said, I planned ahead. It wasn't, I just did this on a whim and I just ran away from my obligations. I planned ahead. I had a week where, I didn't need to be physically, in Texas, and I could, make phone calls and take care of all my business on my laptop. And I thought, what do I have to lose, right? I've never heard of this thing, this public seminar thing. I've never heard of it. And I had never heard of it. I'd never heard of speaking as a job or a business. I've never heard of that in my whole life. But I knew I liked, speaking and performing, and I thought, it's 4 days, right? And they're paying me, and it's like, I don't know what they're paying now, but it's a couple $100 a day. It's not bad. If I remember correctly, with the per diem, it's a couple $1,000s, I think, right? A week. Even if you don't sell anything. Then if you sell some things, I think, you can make more money. So I went off on my adventure because I always, whether it's advisable or not, feel like if there's something I'm going to potentially try, I make calibrated decisions, but I do try. So I tried. And one of the most exciting, interesting things to me was, it was awesome. It wasn't awesome to go to Minneapolis. It was sometime in the winter because it was cold. I remember that. And that I didn't like. But this idea where I get to stand and talk, it was like being a professor, but there's no papers to grade. And it was like getting to do the cool part of law where you're, get to, pontificate, or maybe every once in a while have a neat hearing or a rare trial. But there's no ongoing stress. Somebody's, divorce isn't dependent on you, and there's not all this anger and pain, and it was positive. Right? Like people wanted to come to that meeting. They, signed up for it. They paid for it. It was positive, and I enjoyed it, and it was fun. And I remember coming back, and I talked to the relative who'd given me a ride to the airport, and I said something, and I know I sounded, just insane and goofy, but I said something like, I think I might have found it. And, and they're, what are you talking about? And my point was, maybe I think this might be my thing. I'm good at the other things. I'll always enjoy practicing law. I like solving problems. I like studying legal systems. I like teaching. But the idea that you can kind of go and just be happy and perform and give information, with no grades, to issue, and no, buddy who's angry and calling you bad names because, they still had to, take some probation time, even though they don't have to go to jail. It was just so light emotionally. And it kind of hit all the skills that I enjoyed. So to make a long story short, it was a pivotal turning point. And so over the next couple of years, I, wound down my full-time law practice, which was not easy. And I transitioned to doing the speaking. I went from the public seminars where usually they contract you out to do 5 cities in 5 days. Usually you're in each city for one day, so you fly somewhere Sunday night and then you fly somewhere every single day and you do your seminars in hotel rooms or little local areas. And usually you work with other speakers. So after I got started in that business and started to do a good job, I usually work with at least 2 other speakers. So there'd be 3 speakers and the 3 of you would go out and do these big events. And there would be different roles, like one person would be the master of ceremonies, another person would have a different role. But it was an adventure. And it's funny. I remember, so I started it, and I don't remember, but kind of early on, I was still doing law, right? So when I wasn't out on the road doing these speeches, I was in Austin at my law firm doing that. So I was in court one day. It was a criminal case. And I went to court, and it was one of these things where in criminal cases, the lawyer that represents the defendant, the person who's charged with the crime, goes to court, and you talk to the prosecutor who represents the government, and the prosecutor will sort of tell you what the government's recommendation, they call it a rec, right, for recommendation, what the recommendation would be. And basically they'll make an offer, and they'll say, hey, the person pays a fine of, $1,500, and they do, 90 days in jail, or we go to trial. So you can either, accept that plea, right? You can accept the offer and then have your client enter a plea, usually of no contest or, and so I was sitting in line and they were, and it's like a big room, right? And so the prosecutor's sitting there and there's a couple of them and they have all these files and then there's all these other lawyers waiting in line, the defense lawyers to kind of get to a prosecutor to kind of get a rec. And so we're in this big room and then I finally got to the prosecutor and he, kind of knew me a little bit and he said something like, hey, are you still doing your motivational speeches? Right? Because I guess the word gotten out a little bit. And I just looked at him and I thought, make fun of me all day. And I know it sounds stupid, but it's fun and I like it. And, so I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. And the weird thing is, initially, of course, I was making much more money as a lawyer, right? Because I charged, a couple $100 an hour as a lawyer, whereas the speaking thing was only a couple $100, a day. So it was totally different metrics. But when I started to research the speaking industry, I started to find out that even though I had never heard of it, that it's like a real thing, right? They had an industry group, the National Speakers Association, which is their biggest group that I'm aware of, and it's like a business. And I basically found out that there's basically these levels. There's the public seminar companies, which is what I was working for, right? And they're always hiring. I had looked recently for someone that was interested in maybe getting in the field and went to their websites and boom, of course they're hiring. And so, if you get out there and you're a good, what they call platform speaker, meaning that you can just sort of stand you and a mic and kill, right? You're funny, you're sad, you're interesting, you're engaging, you're a good performer, they're hiring now. And, some of their websites are showing, that you can make $75,000, and up in 6 figures. And that's not a lot. Because you progress, right? So your day rate, is somewhat flexible, and then your commission for selling, right? You upsell other packages, you upsell people to sign up for other programs, and then at some point I transitioned to what they call an on-site, which is where a corporate client comes to them and says, hey, we need someone to come to our company, XYZ Incorporated, and come over here and give us a whole day of training on, performance evaluations. And then that's a whole different thing, right? Like that's not a public where I'm going to like a local hotel and anyone can sign up. That's like a company's hired a specific person to come and do a specific type of on-site, what they call corporate training, right? And so I moved into that, which incredibly, increased the day rate to not hundreds, but 4 figures and over. And then that was going really well. And then I learned that there's this whole industry called speaking, which, who's heard of being a speaker, right? Literally, I'd never heard of this. And I'm thinking I'd gone to college, I got to law school, I'd even gone after that and got my MBA. I'd still never heard of this. I just stumbled into this. And anyway, it turns out there's a whole industry, and there are agents, like an agent, right, who books you for something. So actresses have agents, but there are agents who book people to give speeches, and they're called speaker bureau agencies, which makes sense, right? A speaker bureau represents speakers, and they do what they sound like. They go out and they book speakers all over the world at events. And so when I moved on from the seminar company, I needed to get with agents so that I could be out there working. And speaker bureau agencies have, they want legitimately viable partners that they can sell for speeches, and that they know you're going to show up, you're not going to be drunk, you're going to give a great presentation, people are going to want to hire you again. And so I went out and just started marketing myself and learning about that business. And I had, by that time, quite a list of corporations and organizations I'd been going, on site to train for, and I had a lot of footage of me speaking. I had a lot of client feedback. I had a lot of testimonials. I'd proven that people will pay higher and higher fees for me to come to their organizations. And so speaker bureaus do typically want people to charge somewhere around the, $5,000 a keynote and up, because that's kind of the bottom of that industry. The keynote is typically what it sounds like, a shorter program, and then you can have a fee for a full day or a half day. But the speaker bureau gets paid, they take a commission like most agents, right? So, they don't charge you anything. But when they sell an event, they sell you on an event, so, they'll take a commission of whatever your fees are. And it varies, but it's somewhere around, 20, 25. I think the highest I've seen is 30%. So, everybody's got the same goal, to work. If you don't work, then they don't get any money off of you, and it should be a win-win. It's an awesome business. My personal experience has been, like I said, it's kind of where I found my first idea that maybe there are other, I hate the cliche, outside the box ideas, and there's no need to sit somewhere in the office, being unhappy that maybe only practicing law is not the right thing, but maybe practicing law, giving speeches. Later I moved into, doing television appearances and other things. You have to be creative, and you also have to realize just because you never heard of something doesn't mean it's not real. The question for this episode is it a myth that you can earn $5,000 an hour and no education is required? That actually isn't a myth. Speakers, professional speakers do earn that. And no education is, there's no formal education. But I have to say this. This is an incredibly competitive business. You have got to have some phenomenal performing skills. And I'm not saying that I do, and I know there are people thinking, well, how would you do this? But you have to understand that you have no props. You often are working under, not ideal situations with, sound systems and things of this nature. And you have to be able to speak for long periods of time. It's typical when I go to a corporation and I'm there all day, with breaks and lunch. I'm still speaking for like 6 hours. And you have to be able to engage people, entertain them, use your voice, your body language. There's a whole, science and art to this. And the closest thing I can ever come up with is like a comedian. But comedians work for little short sets, and they usually have all of their content laid out. Often as a speaker, you can't just memorize 6 hours of content. I guess you could, but I don't think that would work. It's a really unique skill set. So there are very, 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 very few people that can do this and do it well enough that people are going to pay them, and be reliable enough, that it's a business, right? Meaning that you're going to show up when you're supposed to. You'll be sober. There's a lot of people who are performers that come into this industry from all different types of being performers. So they are good performers. A lot of them lack the business organization that you need to have in their self-discipline. Also, the industry's changed. It used to be that sort of anybody could get out there and call yourself a speaker, but now it's incredibly competitive. You don't have to have a formal education, but if you have zero education and zero content, you're probably not going to be able to make it, competitively. The sweet spot is high-level performing skills, high-level entertaining, and high-level content, which usually, at least for me, is a combination of all of the different education and professional experience I have. This is an incredibly difficult job. But for those of you who are interested in it, and you really do have that kind of unique performing talent, it could be a viable option. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Always come to CourtneyAnderson.com and join us in our community of solutions and moving forward. Thank you.